Today's episode is brought to you by Musical Theater Radio's merch store. Looking for that perfect gift for someone or just want to treat yourself to some great musical theater themed merch? Head to musicaltheaterradio.com and click on the All Things Theater button on the homepage and check out all the different designs available. And now, today's interview. Welcome back to another episode of Be Our Guest here on Musical Theater Radio. I am your host, as always, Jean-Paul Yovanov. Whenever we hear the word show business, we always focus on the show part, mostly because it's the artistic side, it's the fun side, but really, the business side is just as important, and we need people like today's guest. R.K. Greene is one of the founders of the Storyline Project, a theatrical production company based in New York City. To tell us about who he is, some of the great projects he's worked on and has in the pipeline, and maybe some of his theatrical philosophy, let's welcome R.K. to the show. Hello, R.K. How are you today?
I'm great. I'm just trying to reach back and think about philosophy for a moment, but
Yeah, what did Plato think of theater?
yeah, that's right.
Probably his stuff.
Happy to be here nonetheless. Yeah.
Nice. All right, before we get into everything, I always ask for a 30-second bio. So my question is, who is RK in 30 seconds?
Okay. Well, hello to all those listeners out there. My name is R.K. Greene. I'm the executive director of the Storyline Project. You kind of heard a little bit of the blurb, but I grew up in Seattle, was trained at the University of Washington School of Drama. I appeared in theaters there, but also founded a theater company called the Seattle Group Theater, which was an ensemble, multi-ethnic ensemble back in Seattle back then. It ran for about 20 years and did some really great work. Then came to New York and have divided my time between a business career when I could no longer play 17 on stage, but I did get, my actor's equity and SAG-AFTRA cards and all that stuff and did a bunch of stuff on there. So anyway, we did migrate to the business world when I could no longer play those young roles, knowing that I couldn't be a character actor for some time. Now maybe I could, but I went into business. I worked in publishing and as a management consultant, then with Ernst & Young, including 3 years in Europe in the Netherlands, and where I traveled all around telling companies where to go and what to do. Then I came back. I worked in fuel cells for a couple of years while I started the Storyline Project in about 2000. And it's a commercial production company, meaning we're looking to try to offer our investors an opportunity to actually make money in addition to supporting theater, right? So we've done a number of developmental works, play readings of new plays, and have developed a system whereby we can rank and rate things that we are reading so that we can decide really what we're going to be spending our time on and what might have the best opportunity for commercial property. So there are a bunch of criteria we look at and go on that way. But anyway, our first major production was a revival of Room Service downtown that ran, about 8 months. And then we did Peter and the Starcatcher, not only on Broadway, but off-Broadway at New World Stages, and then on tour that ran, I think it was even up in Toronto.
I can't remember. I know I directed a version of Peter and Starcatcher, but it wasn't
Did
the
you?
same one. Yeah, I did.
Well, that must have been a lot of fun.
Oh, it was the first show I had done in a while. I was away from theater for about 5 years, came back, and that was first, and it was, I loved it. It was so much fun. That's a great show.
And it was a great cast. Everybody loved that show, still getting kudos. Anyway, so in the background, you can see one of the posters and The Time to Kill, a little gem called Love Child by Daniel Jenkins and Robert Stanton that's published by Playscripts. And then most recently, we did Farinelli and the King with Mark Rylance, and then Harmony that Barry Manilow had written the music for on Broadway too. So now we're working on new stuff.
Nice. Well, you've been busy then since for a
I
long
juggle.
time. You've
Yeah.
been busy. I mean, I'm curious, what draws you to the arts in the first place? When you were younger, was there something, what was it something about the arts that drew you to it?
Well, none of my family, well, my parents anyway,
Mhm.
were involved in the arts. At church, my father couldn't sing and it was embarrassing, type of thing. And they, grew up in the Depression and had, you know, very limited means. So arts weren't something that they were able to do a lot. Anyway, so my parents didn't know what to do with me, uh, and kind of let me go along the lines. And one of the things that they sent me to was a program at the University of Washington called Creative Dramatics, which was a program that was teaching educators from the School of Education to use dramatic principles in the classroom. And so Geraldine Six and Agnes Haga, who were really tops in their field, would corral a bunch of kids, in a little studio, and you'd have people from the education department to becoming teachers were they're looking at the things they were doing. So, it was playing animals, doing all sorts of variety of exercises in that as demonstrations. Anyway, so that got me hooked into theater and
Nice.
have been kind of following it ever since.
I'm curious, like you said, obviously you were in theater when you were younger, you playing the leading roles, the leading you're looking men roles and everything, and then you switched into the business world, right? I'm curious, was that an easy switch for you? Because I know when I for a while I was doing arts and then I switched into doing business and going to networking events. And that's a completely different vernacular and thought process with working with business people. Did you find it an easy transition, or did you find it difficult to transition from artist to business thinking?
Well, I think it was kind of easy for me uh, for two reasons. One, theater, nonprofit, for profit, et cetera, is very entrepreneurial. And so you're always building a new project, a new business in effect. So that's one of the things that eased the transition. And the other thing is that I never had, the actor or director type jobs,
Mhm.
waiting tables, bartending, temping a lot. So uh, I was able to use the things that I learned in publishing, uh, computers and all that stuff to kind of move into, you know, the world of big business.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that first show that you produced. What was that like? What was some of the pitfalls that you learned from that you might have fallen into for that first one, and you learned from just for some of the other people that might be interested in producing and that sort of thing, listening?
Well, that was Room Service, the great, uh, uh, you know, farce comedy. Uh, the Marx Brothers made a movie of it
Hmm.
after it played and was hugely successful on Broadway at the Court Theater, 35, something like that. Anyway, so uh, we did a revival of it. It was done and developed with the Peccadillo Theater Company, Dan Wackerman and Kevin Kennedy, when they were downtown, and it was really successful. And we did it in like June and July. And then we said, well, it's so good. We got a great review in the New York Times. Well, let's move it. And so the first lesson was it's really hard to raise money in August and early September because people are gone. They're thinking of other things. They're out on Long Island, they're etc. So that was one of the first things I found. But all the work that I did at that time came back and people came in. And so we were able to raise the money to actually do it. And it's a huge cast, older cast. And this was in the Soho Playhouse, a very small dressing room. So everybody was kind of really crammed in, except for the women. And there are only two women in the cast. And so they had their own dressing room that was quite luxurious, but everybody else was kind of stuffed in. But it was in this kind of creaky theater almost environmental because the widow of Al Boritz, one of the writers, actually owned the theater in Soho. And so that added a little extra thing to it.
Huh.
So anyway, keeping something open once it was reviewed and you got the audience, you kept to have we need to keep having things to promote it.
Yeah.
One of our saving graces was, a review that came in January after we'd opened in November from the Wall Street Journal that was really terrific. And that brought us a whole new realm of business people, that wanted to come in and see it. So keeping promotions going. We were actually trying to think of some stunts that we could have to keep it going. And unfortunately, our press person at the time just wouldn't touch a stunt. We wanted to have one of those big inflatable rats, that was complaining about people in working outside of the union, and construction. We wanted to have one of them, wanted to put it in front of the producers and say, because they're very similar stories, we wanted to say, well, that the producers was unfair because they were taking our audience away and we were going to get a big rat out in front of them and protested before the police chased us away. And then invite everybody down to the Soho Playhouse to see some real comedy. Anyway, couldn't do that. But those were kind of the things that we were thinking about.
Well, you gotta think outside the box. I hate that term, think outside the box, but you got to. You got to figure out a way to get yourself noticed. And you know what? Who knows? It might have worked, it might have backfired. And that's the problem with stunts too, right? You don't know.
Well, some people say that there's no such
No,
thing as bad publicity.
exactly. You're gonna get noticed, whatever
But if
happens.
you can get in the New York Post or something like that, which is what, we would have had photographers there and
Yeah.
that. Anyway, it would have been an interesting staging.
Nice. Well, let's talk about Peter and the Starcatcher. How did you get involved with that? Because that's like I said, I directed. It's a fantastic show, but where it went was incredible. So tell us about that.
Well, yeah, it was really a terrific experience. I tried to get a ticket downtown at the New York Theater Workshop and pulling strings and everything. I couldn't get there, but they had taped it and it was in the Lincoln Center Library, which is really one of the world's best theater libraries. Uh, and so part of the New York Public Library system. So I got to see it there. I had friends who were interested. We knew it had great reviews. We knew that it had some really great talent involved. Cecilia Keenan Bolger, others that were just great. And it was a lot of fun thing. And so we met with Roger Rees and Alex Timbers, who I knew, and said, yeah, let's go out and let's raise money and let's become one of the co-producers of the show. And we're involved in all the marketing and decision making with the lead producers. And Disney was really terrific because they had published the original books. Hyperion is their publishing company, and they wanted to, move it forward. And so they gave Roger Rees the opportunity to develop it. And they developed it up in Massachusetts when he was up there, and they developed it in little churches, in basements down here in New York City. And it just grew until the New York Theater Workshop, which really was spectacular, and all this inventive stuff that they were doing in the show. So that's kind of how I got involved, and glad I did.
So what was it like to see the journey of that show from to where it ended up? Like tell us about your experiences of as a producer, your feelings of seeing it grow to where it did.
Yeah, it well, it was amazing to watch it, seeing it in previews and seeing the adjustments that were being made we were meeting like every other week or so to help promote it and get, social media and print media and look at all the reviews, watch it grow during the previews
Mhm.
themselves. And then as there were cast changes, and then as there, and went from Broadway, what would we get? 9 Tony nominations and then 5 awards at that time. So that was getting to go to, the Tony Awards
Yeah.
was really, really special.
Wow.
Um, and then we took it from Broadway to Off-Broadway at the New World Stage, which is a 499 seat theater,
Mhm.
and ran it there for a year while we were putting together the tour, which ran for about a year and a half. And we wanted to keep the show alive. And so we did that. And then we went on tour, and now it's in Australia.
Oh,
There's a tour of it. It's been kind of reconfigured by the Dead Puppet Society, and which is an Australian-based theatrical group, and it's doing really well there. And so we're hoping that maybe it'll go on to other Asian, uh, countries, and we'll see.
that's very cool. Congratulations on that. Just you found a gem of a show, and it's so exciting to see it move and grow and fruition, and then winning that Tony must have been just it's just incredible to be there. What was your initial reaction? I'm always curious when you A heard that you've been nominated and B being there and then the wins.
Well, first of all, just to be nominated is, really a feather in one's cap and in the show's cap, and it brings on all this publicity as well. Now it's a lot of competition, but then to win and go on to win so many of them was just ecstatic. We were a strong group of producers, and had bonded over that, and were had a great time. And then we had a really great time at the party afterwards at the Plaza Hotel, celebrating.
Nice. I'd love to jump ahead to Harmony, which unfortunately closed for whatever reason. I didn't even get to see it, which was awful because
Um,
I was in town. I wasn't able to get in for whatever reason. And then yeah, I was gonna come back and then it was closed. And I was like, tell us about that journey because it's unfortunate, but I'd be curious from a producer standpoint, your experience from it.
well, you never know about these things,
Mm.
what's going to catch on,
Yeah.
what's happening in the world that might affect it. And Harmony had been in development for about 30 years.
Wow.
Bruce Sussman, who was Barry Manilow's partner, had seen a movie about the comedian harmonist down at Joe's, I think down at the Public Theater, and said, "This is what we're going to write," because Barry Manilow had set out to be a musical writer,
Mm.
and this was an opportunity. Well, he did a couple of things. Copacabana, that played in London, and I think it played in Atlantic City. you know, um, but this is what he really wanted to do, and so they built this thing out of this amazing story about the comedian harmonists that were a comedian a cappella group of sextet in
Mhm.
the Weimar era of Germany, and then because of the Nazi, assumption of power, and that there were Jewish men in the team, that they were tolerated for a little bit, and then finally, because they were making fun of the regime, were disbanded, sent off to the Russian front, etc. Um, a really fascinating story. So, a friend of mine that I went to grade school with in Seattle is Barry Manilow's personal assistant for some 20 some years. And so I've been hearing about this and its development over time. And so I said, well, look, I'll put in a little bit of money and let's see how it does downtown at the Folksbian Theater, which is on Lower Manhattan in the Battery,
Mhm.
uh, Jewish theater. And small 300-seat theater, cramming this big show into it. And we got Times Critic picks. We got to see the show. We got to learn more about it. And that gave me the opportunity to then go on to the Broadway production, which I could then raise money for should it go. And yes, it did. And in the meantime, it took about a year from off Broadway to Broadway. There was a workshop production, and I got to attend some of the changes. There were a couple of cast changes as well, script changes that they wanted to infuse a little bit more comedy in the first part of it. And so I got to see some of those changes as they were working on it. And then, we got the go ahead for the Barrymore Theater, which made sense because it was Barry show. Yeah. Yeah. And then we were really pleased that it didn't catch on. The reviews were half the reviews were good, some were okay, some were really awful, and there was some trepidation because of what was going on in Israel at the time about people coming to attend it. We had undercover police there. We had uniformed police there just in case nothing ever happened,
Yeah.
But it was a concern of the audience. So
I remember that because I went to go see, it was an off-Broadway show. It was an Anne Frank musical. And there was cops outside and the same thing. Because when I walked up, I was like, this is different. I knew the director, so he and I talked about it afterwards. But yeah, that's the thing. You write a show, you have it, but you can't control the world and what's going on. And it's
oh darn, yeah.
if only we could. But and that's it's a night it must be a nightmare as a producer that you do everything right. You've got this all on, but something out of your control that you don't even a pandemic, whatever else is going on in the rest of the world. Like, do you consider those type of things, or you just have to roll with those? And how do
Well,
you
you kind of have to roll with them because you never know when everything's going to come together
Yeah.
with a piece. I mean, with the theater, with the investment, with the cast, all those things have to come together at one time. And you go with it when you get it going. I don't know of any show that said no, once everything came together, said, oh no, I don't think that's the right time. Because you can do a variety of things to counter whatever those concerns are, uh, in your publicity, in how you present the show and talk about it. So you just go with the flow.
I don't know how you guys can do it as producers sometimes. I'm in awe of what you guys know, because there's the risk, there's not just the financial risk, but there's also the mental and emotional risk, because you put your heart and soul into this. And if something doesn't work for whatever reason, or if it does work for whatever reason, and sometimes you can't even control when it's a hit, right? You're like, I don't okay, I'll roll with it. I don't
Yeah.
how do you deal with that sort of thing, like from not just financial, I mean like a mental and emotional state?
Well, you work with people you like. You're with them and trust, and you're working with them for often years.
Yeah.
And so, one of the decisions you make in getting involved in a show or working with a show is who you work with and who you bring on.
Yeah.
And that makes a big difference. And then, people like Warren Carlyle, who was the director of choreography of Harmony, and the cast was just so gung-ho, and they were so beautifully harmonizing in the show that it was a delight to see. So those are some of the things that kind of help you address the concerns and risks that may be there.
Well, let's talk about the storyline project. And I know you talked a little bit about it. So when you started it, but what was the true impetus for starting that and growing it?
Well, I wanted to work with my friends,
Mhm.
uh, two of whom were also with me at the University of Washington School of Drama back in the day, and one from the University of Michigan, but that's okay. He, they, we really wanted to control as much as we could our artistic output
Mhm.
in the theater, and that's the producer's role. They're the CEO, they're, the fundraisers, etc. And I wanted to be able to apply my business experience, you know, into the theater. And so, for instance, one of the things I do is I teach business plans. How do you apply a business plan to the theater? Because every new show is a new business. You've got all these things, people that are developing,
Mhm.
but how do you help move it along? What's the goal? What are the things that you can do to solidify it, to give it substance so that people will come to see it or back it, etc.? Where does it go after you get something up? Is there an opportunity in the future?
Yeah.
So those are the kind of things that, I think about. And the storyline project, because we named it the storyline because the story is really, we felt, the most important part of a show. No, we the music, of course, is really important, but unless it's connected together with a story and characters that people can feel and roll with and want to know what happens and be involved in that story, it's going to be really hard. You could have great music, and often you do, but that's the storyline
Yeah.
reason for that, the company name. So that's really what we did, is to put our skills in business and help theater along and develop new work.
What about a show that draws you to it? That goes, you know what? I want to take this show to the next level. And just to take that a little bit farther, you're not the only one in the company. How does a company decide as which show? Because individually you might go, oh, I really like that, but then now you have to, incorporate everybody. I'd be curious how that works for you.
Well, we have this methodology. And so when we're looking at something, and one of the things we're looking at right now is something called Wild Man of Winoochi. That actually is about the Olympic Peninsula in Washington State of a century ago. But evaluating that, looking at, where it might be in the marketplace, but how the story works, how the characters are drawn, how the language is, all these criteria that we look at. And that's how we kind of come up to the conclusion about what we're going to do. Um, and that helps us focus on things. So, and really, you can actually start planning based on that analysis. And then it's the story, is the story involving. Uh, I like historical things
Mhm.
as well. I mean, Farinelli and the King was this tremendous piece. Uh, so, that Mark Rylance did, and it was beautifully done in ways. And they had this terrific Llewellyn Davis as the countertenor, who was the castrati in the show. And it was a really unusual piece as well. Um, and I don't think anybody had ever seen a show like that before. And one of the things I met years ago, Sam Fuller, the iconoclast film director, uh, who used to be a journalist, and he told me, show them something they've never seen before. And he described a movie he was working on, and they were going to take a big logging truck and pull it up by helicopter way up and drop it. And they said, well, they'd never seen that before.
Unfortunately, we can't do that in the theater, but
Well,
yeah,
maybe
maybe.
not that, but they do have
Maybe,
helicopters in
well, maybe,
theaters.
well, we've taken helicopters in the theater, we've dropped chandeliers, so you never know anymore. Tell us about some of the projects you've got going on. You mentioned the Wild Men, that's one of them, but yeah, tell us some of the projects you'd like for us to know about.
Sure. Well, there are two shows that I'm working on right now. One is Fifth Avenue by Susan Crawford and Dan Seidman, which is about or set in Prohibition, and two entrepreneurial immigrants from Europe are interested in taking a really fancy club like they have on Fifth Avenue, but putting it in Hell's Kitchen. And to do so, they borrow money from the Irish mob, and they don't want to have anything to do with liquor. And so there's some entanglements in that. And so we first did it up at Don't Tell Mama to kind of test it out, kind of a truncated part of the show and get an audience response and kind of develop it. And then we did a reading at the York Theater Company, which specializes in musicals, particularly kind of an old style type of musical. And that went well. Now that we're in the midst of rewriting and seeing about where it's going to go next. And there's some theaters that are interested. They want to see what improvements we've made. And then the other one that I've got is called Beau, which is spelled Beau, which is by the hot playwright Douglas Lyons and his writing partner, composer Ethan Pakchar. Douglas Lyons, he did Chicken and Biscuits on Broadway, but he also just had a hit and won a couple of Adelco Awards for Table 17 at the MCC Theater just this fall. Really funny, great piece. So Beau is their first musical, and it's about a grandfather and grandson who've been kept apart all of their lives, didn't even know about each other really, only to find out that the grandfather's in the hospital in Memphis and the grandson is in Nashville, and he's so desperate to meet any living male kin of his that he steals money from his mother's purse, takes the Greyhound bus all the way, which is about a 4-hour journey, to Memphis, and surprises his grandfather in the hospital room where he's recovering. And he's an irascible cuss and doesn't acknowledge any living kin at all. But they finally bond, and they bond over a guitar by the name of not Lucille, by the name of Tharp, uh, the great blues player from the 50s and 60s.
Oh,
Rosetta.
mm.
That's, I think, Rosetta. Anyway, with that, and the young boy who's a teenager, he starts a journal and he writes about his family and his friends and his grandfather, his first kiss, and they become the songs for the show. And we've been working on it for a couple of years. We had an out of town tryout, which went really well and got some great reviews. We then got a deal with Sony Broadway, and they issued an album of it. We debuted it at Joe's Pub downtown, and then we finally stopped because of the pandemic and decided to make a feature-length film, which we got a studio that really wasn't being used at that time out in Greenpoint, Brooklyn, that had two different places. One where we could rehearse because all of our cast members, they hadn't worked in a year. And so they needed to get up to speed and not only thing, but then we needed to figure out how we're going to adapt this stage production to film without, just being a live capture type of thing. And then we built the set on the other side. And then we shot in about 6 days, and I entered it in a number of film festivals, including up in Toronto and Vancouver, British Columbia, and Sedona, and here in New York, a couple of things, Dances with Films, and it won a couple of best of, fest awards, which we were very pleased at. Now we're looking to hopefully get that onto streaming, but also in conjunction with a show that I'm hoping we're going to get up this spring, summer here in New York City, and work the album, the show, the film kind of together to develop it to go further.
That's awesome. I love learning about new shows and introducing them to our listeners and thank you, from all the writers out there. Thank you for looking at new works and promoting them and giving them an opportunity to take it to the next level, because without people like yourself, we it's so hard. Like I said at the beginning, the show part, as artists, we focus on that. That's all we are intent, and we forget about the business part. And we need people who understand, the show part, but are
Yeah.
focused on the business part. So,
And give opportunity
mhm.
as well. And you get a lot of there's a lot of writing out there. There's a lot of
Yes. Oh,
graduates out of the schools, drama, and people that want to be actors and singers and all that. So there's a lot of product out there right now. So it's really tough for theaters to be able to decide what to do and how they manage to figure out what they want to do.
well, speaking of, what advice would you give writers who are looking to take their show to the next level if they're approaching a producer like yourself? Some tricks and tips that you could give them.
Sure. Well, you want to be sure that your script is in the best possible setting. And, if that means, some table reads, etc., to get it before you really start showing it off to theaters or uh, to producers and the like, you want to be able to make sure that it's ready. And you also want to develop relationships with those theaters and with uh, people that can help you move along the way. Even uh, rich friends, because often, you need a little bit of money, and a rich friend or family member can help out in that to kind of get it in a position that the show is ready to see it. One of the organizations I belong to is called Theater Resources Unlimited, which I've been involved with for too many years to think even think about. But they uh, they have a Friday night community gathering that's free in effect, and it's on Zoom, and people from all over the world are there, and you're hearing from speakers, but you also have an audience that includes producers and playwrights and musicians and people who are self-producing their own shows, those types of things. And you can learn a bit about, you know, the business, and maybe meet some people that can help move things along, or you can hear ideas that are important and just kind of get a sense about all the kind of shows that are out there and how people are, kind of pitching them.
I,
They,
I, sorry, I was gonna say that's some of the great advice, right? It doesn't matter how good your show is, if you're not networking and talking to people, no one will find out about it.
yeah, and that's, one of the great things about your show, Musical Theater Radio, is that you're getting things out there and helping uh, people discover new work and new people. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's so hard to get new work because everybody wants to hear the old stuff. Everybody loves the classics, but forget that the classics were new works at some point that somebody had to help promote or discover. So, yeah.
Yeah, and you're looking for the new, those new people that are going to be the next,
Mhm.
well, now Lin-Manuel Miranda's of the world, what is the next type of thing? And you have, some really interesting shows that are being developed, like maybe Happy Ending, which is now playing on Broadway. And that's a little bit different. It's about robots, Korean robots, but it's getting splendid reviews,
Yeah.
probably the best reviews of the season. Uh, and so much of commercial theater is predicated on stars or known entities, or uh, derived from some movie or book. A lot of that is there. And so the ones that are taking greater risk, like the Storyline Project and myself, are looking for new things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's even a harder mountain to climb, than say, oh, we're going to make The Notebook, or, let's do a revival of Gypsy. Okay, well, you got Audra McDonald. Okay, and it's going to be a little bit different, but okay, I'll go see that.
Yep.
A
And
great show.
we understand as as artists and producers, etc., that having a known work, or a known star, or a classic, it's safe. And there's nothing wrong with safe. Sometimes we want to see these, but sometimes I personally, I find it more exciting to take a little risk, try something new. It's like when you're eating. Sure, I love chocolate cake. That's wonderful. But you can't sustain yourself on just that. You need to try something new and different, because you never know what you're going to find.
That's right. Yeah. And it's the other thing that I'll advise
Mhm.
people that are listening in is that there aren't a lot of new plays that are commercially successful on Broadway.
Mhm.
They often have been developed in nonprofit theaters, and have found their way through that, and are even appearing on Broadway in the Manhattan Theater Club or Roundabout, which are nonprofits that are producing on Broadway as well, and have a subscriber base that can support something new, instead of having to, reinvent all the marketing and etc. of, the next version of, well, Gypsy I'd mentioned earlier, that type of thing,
Yeah.
which is leveraging off that great musical and some great talent.
Yeah.
So, making friends with your local theater, the nonprofit area, uh, that kind of networking and relationship can be right valuable.
100%. I 100% agree. Yeah. Everybody wants to get their stuff to Broadway or the West End. You want to take it to the pinnacle, but the truth is there's nothing wrong with starting in your local area. If you live in Wichita, Kansas, right? There's theaters there. It's,
Yeah.
it's nothing wrong with
There are
going there
quite
first.
successful playwrights that are just doing are promoting themselves and their shows, and they're playing regional theaters all over the world. They can get, um, if they get some reviews, they might be able to be handled by something like Playscripts or
Mhm.
Concord or something like that, and then it becomes licensable, and all of a sudden it's a business that can help sustain you.
Yep. Oh, me personally, I'd rather have my show get 300 productions in community theaters and small venues than a 2-week run on Broadway where you never know what's going to happen, because my philosophy is, am I writing this to get rich, or am I writing this to be seen because it's art? And if I happen to get rich, awesome. I
And because you want to tell a story.
exactly. And
Yeah.
and I think a lot of people lose track of that, maybe that I you should be telling the story first and then worry about the other stuff later. But that's me. Other people have different beliefs, but that's okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
tell us, how do people get to know more about yourself, the storyline project, the websites, the socials, etc., and about the other shows as well.
Sure. Well, we do have a website called it's called storylineproject.com, https www, etc. Storylineproject.com. And that has all the shows that we've been involved, who we are, what we're looking for, and things. So that's the best way that people can, check us out, but also see what we do and get in contact with us. We're, a small player in this big business of Broadway, which is really not that big a business when you're thinking of a really big business, but
Yeah.
still, it's a couple $1 billion industry these days. So um, that's one way. And, we do have Facebook pages for Beau. We have a website for Beau. We have a website for Fifth Avenue. Um, so there are things that you can reach out to see us, Instagram, you know, and that's what we use to promote. And one of the things I'm doing right now is getting ready for hopefully this production of Beau that I'm keeping fingers crossed for this summer.
Yeah.
Is certainly one of the ways that I'm allowing people to know about me if we don't know it. But
Yeah.
I've been nurturing the relationships on this show for several years. So now maybe it's ready to go.
Fantastic. And please, once you have some information about it, the tickets, all that, I'd love to have them on to promote the show and see if we can help get some butts and seats and more knowledge about it in
Oh,
the
that's great.
future. Because
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
no problem, because if we don't support each other, who's going to support us?
Yeah.
Like we have to help each other. Um, RK, thank you so much for coming on, introducing the listeners and myself more to it. I knew a little bit about you and what you do, but I learned a little bit more, which is always good. All the best. Keep doing what you're doing, because again, like I said, people who support new works are so important, and I love what you do. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity and continued success.
Thank you. All right. So yeah, we were just speaking with RK Greene, one of the co-founders of the Storyline Project. Make sure you check them out. Again, if you support them, you're supporting new works, and new works are the future. Today's new works are tomorrow's classics. So just don't forget that. Tune in next week as we speak with another guest or guest about their life, love, and passion that is musical theater. I am your host, as always, Jean-Paul Yovanoff. And until next time, I'll see you when I see you.